Pablo Escobar, the infamous Colombian drug lord, was notorious for his ruthless and extravagant lifestyle. His actions, both outrageous and appalling, have become the stuff of legend. In this video, we will explore 15 of the craziest things Escobar has done, shedding light on the bizarre and dangerous world he inhabited. Number 1. Burning millions of dollars. Pablo Escobar amassed a fortune through his drug empire, but one of the craziest things he ever did was burn millions of dollars. As the head of the Medellín cartel, Escobar was making an estimated $420 million a week during the height of his power. With so much money at his disposal, he was known to flaunt his wealth in unimaginable ways. One chilly night in the late 1980s, Escobar was on the run with his family, hiding from the authorities in the mountains near Medellín. His daughter, Manuela, was feeling cold and shivering. In an attempt to keep her warm, Escobar reportedly took out $2 million in cash and set it ablaze. This impulsive act demonstrated not only his vast wealth, but also the lengths he would go to for his family. The story of Escobar burning millions of dollars has been told and retold, with some variations in the details. While some accounts claim he burned $1 million, others suggest it was as much as $2 million. Regardless of the exact amount, the act itself is a testament to the surreal world of excess and impunity that Escobar inhabited. Even beyond burning cash, Escobar was known to be extremely wasteful with his money. He once claimed that he lost $2.1 billion annually due to rats eating away at the money hidden in walls, fields, and warehouses. Additionally, the cartel spent an estimated $2,500 per month on rubber bands just to hold stacks of bills together. Despite the ostentatious displays of wealth, Escobar's money could not protect him from the consequences of his actions. His brutal reign eventually caught up with him, leading to a violent end. The story of Pablo Escobar burning millions of dollars serves as an example of the reckless and unbelievable world of drug trafficking, a world where money was so abundant that it could be used as kindling for a fire. Number 2. Building a private zoo. Pablo Escobar was not only interested in building an empire in the drug trade, but also in creating a private zoo. He was known to have a fascination with exotic animals, and he wanted to create a collection that would rival any other in the world. His personal zoo was located on his sprawling estate, Hacienda Nápoles, which covered more than 7,000 acres in the Colombian jungle. The zoo was home to a variety of animals, including elephants, lions, tigers, and zebras. Escobar spared no expense in creating a lavish environment for his animals, complete with swimming pools, landscaped gardens, and imported trees. He even had a life-sized replica of a prehistoric dinosaur constructed on the property. Despite the extravagant displays, the zoo was not without controversy. Many of the animals were obtained illegally, and their care was often neglected. The Colombian government eventually took control of the estate, and the animals were sent to various zoos around the country. Number 3. Escaping from prison. In 1991, Pablo Escobar was incarcerated in a prison called La Catedral, which he had built himself to avoid extradition to the United States. However, he soon discovered that he had more control over his own prison than the authorities did. Escobar continued to run his drug empire from behind bars, using his cell phone to coordinate smuggling operations and even entertain guests. On July 22, 1992, the Colombian government announced that it would be transferring Escobar to a more secure facility. However, Escobar had other plans. He had already arranged for a tunnel to be dug underneath the prison, which he used to escape along with 10 other prisoners. The tunnel was almost a mile long, and it took the prisoners over 6 months to dig. The escape was a major embarrassment for the Colombian government, and it led to a nationwide manhunt for Escobar. He remained on the run for over a year, using his vast wealth to evade the authorities. He even went so far as to offer a $2 million reward to anyone who could kill the top police officers leading the manhunt. Finally, in December 1993, Escobar was tracked down by Colombian police and killed in a shootout on a rooftop in Medellín. His escape from La Catedral remains one of the most audacious prison breaks in history and is a testament to the power and influence that Escobar wielded over Colombian society. Number 4. Creating a drug smuggling submarine. Pablo Escobar was always looking for new and innovative ways to smuggle drugs into the United States. One of his most audacious schemes was to build a submarine specifically designed for drug trafficking. The submarine was constructed in a remote jungle location in Colombia, far from prying eyes. It was made of steel and was powered by 2 diesel engines. The interior was designed to hold up to 10 tons of cocaine and was equipped with a navigation system, sonar, and radar. The submarine was also equipped with a periscope, which allowed the crew to keep an eye out for any approaching vessels. The first test run of the submarine took place in 1981, and it was deemed a success. Over the years, the submarine was used to transport drugs from Colombia to various ports in Central America and Mexico. It was then offloaded onto smaller boats and smuggled into the United States. The use of a submarine allowed Escobar to bypass the usual inspection and detection methods used by law enforcement. It was also an indication of the lengths he was willing to go to maintain his hold on the drug trade. Despite the success of the submarine, it was eventually captured by the Colombian Navy in 1988. The submarine was found in a river near the border with Panama, and it was filled with cocaine. The capture was a significant blow to the Medellín cartel, as it demonstrated the vulnerability of their smuggling methods. The submarine has since become a symbol of the drug trade and is a testament to the ingenuity and resourcefulness of Pablo Escobar. While it may have been a crazy and dangerous idea, it was also an indication of the lengths that he was willing to go to in order to maintain his power and influence. Number 5. Constructing a luxury prison. Pablo Escobar's wealth and power were so vast that he was able to construct his own prison. Known as La Catedral, the prison was located in the mountains near Medellín and was built to Escobar's specifications. The prison was unlike any other in the world. It had a soccer field, a bar, and even a waterfall. Escobar's cell was more like a luxury apartment, complete with a king-size bed, a hot tub, and a private kitchen. He was allowed to receive visitors and was even allowed to leave the prison for extended periods of time. Escobar's luxury prison was designed to give him a measure of control and autonomy. He was able to continue running his drug empire from behind bars, using the prison as a base of operations. The Colombian government was reluctant to confront him directly, and they hoped that the prison would keep him out of trouble. However, the luxury prison proved to be a major embarrassment for the government. Escobar's control over the prison was so complete that he was able to receive guests and throw lavish parties. He was even able to escape from the prison in 1992, further humiliating the government. After the escape, the government took control of the prison and turned it into a maximum security facility. The luxurious amenities were removed, and the cells were made smaller and more Spartan. The construction of La Catedral was a testament to Escobar's wealth and power. He was able to create his own private world, complete with all the amenities he desired. However, it was also an indication of the corruption and complicity that allowed him to flourish. The story of Escobar's luxury prison is a cautionary tale of the dangers of unchecked power and the lengths that people will go to maintain it. Number 6. Bribing the Colombian government. Pablo Escobar was not only a drug lord but also a master of corruption. He was known for bribing Colombian officials and politicians, including judges, police officers, and members of Congress. He used his vast wealth to buy off those who stood in his way and to ensure that he could operate with impunity. One of the most notorious examples of Escobar's corruption was his involvement in the 1984 election of Colombian President Belisario Betancourt. Escobar's Medellín cartel was responsible for a series of bombings and assassinations in the lead-up to the election, which resulted in Betancourt's victory. In exchange, Betancourt agreed to halt the extradition of Colombian drug traffickers to the United States. Escobar's influence over the Colombian government was not limited to the presidency. He also bribed members of Congress and the judiciary, ensuring that his interests were protected. In one case, he reportedly paid a judge $2 million to have an arrest warrant against him dismissed. The corruption of the Colombian government by the drug cartels was a major factor in the rise of the drug trade in the country. The cartels were able to operate with relative ease, knowing that they could bribe officials and avoid prosecution. The corruption also had a corrosive effect on Colombian society, leading to widespread disillusionment and a lack of trust in government institutions. The story of Pablo Escobar's corruption is a cautionary tale of the dangers of unchecked power and the corrosive effect of corruption. It highlights the need for strong institutions and the rule of law to ensure that those in power are held accountable. While Escobar may have been able to bribe his way out of trouble for a time, eventually his actions caught up with him, leading to his downfall. Number 7. Rigging soccer matches. Pablo Escobar was not only involved in drug trafficking, but also in other criminal activities, including match fixing in soccer. He used his influence and wealth to rig matches and ensure that his favored teams won. One of the most notorious cases of match fixing was the 1989 Copa Libertadores final between Atlético Nacional of Colombia and Olimpia of Paraguay. Escobar was a fan of Atlético Nacional and wanted them to win at any cost. He reportedly paid off the referee, who awarded several controversial penalties to Atlético Nacional, leading to their victory. The match-fixing scandal caused outrage in Colombia and led to widespread protests. The Colombian government was forced to take action, and several officials and players were banned from the sport. The scandal also damaged the reputation of Colombian soccer, which had already been tarnished by violence and corruption. Despite the scandal, Escobar continued to use soccer as a means of maintaining his power and influence. He was known to attend matches and offer bribes to players and officials. In some cases, he even threatened violence against those who refused to cooperate. The rigging of soccer matches was not just a means of entertainment for Escobar, but also a way of exerting control over Colombian society. By controlling the sport, he was able to influence public opinion and create a sense of loyalty among his supporters. However, the rigging of soccer matches was also an indication of the corruption and criminality that plagued Colombian society. It showed how even a seemingly innocent activity like sports could be corrupted by the influence of drug traffickers and other criminal elements. The story of Pablo Escobar's involvement in match fixing is a cautionary tale of the dangers of allowing criminal elements to infiltrate and corrupt institutions. It highlights the need for strong institutions and the rule of law to ensure that the interests of the public are protected. The legacy of Escobar's actions can still be felt in Colombian soccer and society, reminding us of the need to remain vigilant against corruption and criminality. Number 8. Narco-terrorism, bombing Avianca Flight 203. Pablo Escobar was not afraid to use violence to maintain his power and influence. In 1989, he ordered the bombing of Avianca Flight 203, killing all 107 passengers and crew on board. The plane was on its way from Bogotá to Cali when a bomb exploded, causing it to crash into a mountain. The bombing was an act of narco-terrorism, a term used to describe the use of violence by drug traffickers to achieve their goals. Escobar was reportedly targeting a presidential candidate who was on board the flight, as well as several other individuals who were opposed to his drug empire. The bombing was a horrific act of violence and caused outrage in Colombia and around the world. It was seen as a clear indication of the lengths that Escobar was willing to go to maintain his power and influence. The bombing of Avianca Flight 203 was not an isolated incident. Escobar and his associates were responsible for a wave of violence in Colombia during the 1980s and early 1990s, including bombings, assassinations, and kidnappings. The legacy of the bombing is still felt in Colombia today, reminding us of the dangers of allowing criminal elements to use violence to achieve their goals. It is a reminder of the need for strong institutions and the rule of law to ensure that those in power are held accountable. Number 9. Giving away free houses. Pablo Escobar was known for his generosity to the poor and marginalized in Colombia. One of the most bizarre and generous things he ever did was to give away free houses to those in need. Escobar was able to finance the construction of hundreds of houses in poor neighborhoods in Medellín, which he gave away for free to families who were struggling to make ends meet. He also provided them with basic amenities like electricity, water, and sewage. The free houses were seen as a way for Escobar to buy the loyalty of the poor and marginalized in Colombian society. By providing them with basic necessities, he was able to create a sense of indebtedness among the recipients. However, the free houses were also an indication of the inequality and poverty that existed in Colombia at the time. Escobar was able to use his vast wealth to address a problem that the government was unable or unwilling to solve. The story of Escobar's free houses is a reminder of the complex legacy of the drug lord. While he was responsible for untold violence and suffering in Colombia, he was also able to use his power and influence for good. The free houses are a symbol of both his generosity and his manipulation of those in need. Number 10. Racing cars on a private track. Pablo Escobar was known for his love of luxury and extravagance, and one of his favorite pastimes was racing cars on a private track. He had a collection of exotic cars, including Ferraris, Lamborghinis, and Porsches, which he would race against his friends and associates. The private track was located on his estate, Hacienda Napoles, and was designed to accommodate high-speed racing. The track was surrounded by lush gardens and palm trees, and the cars would race around the curves and straights at breakneck speeds. Escobar's love of racing was not just a hobby, but also a way of flaunting his wealth and power. It was an indication of the excess and extravagance that he was able to indulge in, even as he operated a vast criminal empire. The private racing track is now a tourist attraction, and visitors can walk around the track and see the cars that were once driven by the notorious drug lord. Number 11. Burying money in the ground. Pablo Escobar was known for his vast wealth, but he was also known for his paranoia. He was constantly worried about the safety of his money and the threat of confiscation by the authorities. One of the ways that Escobar protected his money was by burying it in the ground. He would hide large amounts of cash in secret locations on his properties, using his vast network of associates to keep track of the buried treasure. The practice of burying money in the ground was not just a way of protecting it from the authorities, but also a way of keeping it out of the hands of rival drug cartels. Escobar was always worried about the threat of violence from his enemies, and burying his money was seen as a way of protecting himself and his wealth. Despite the precautions that Escobar took, much of his wealth was eventually seized by the authorities. The buried treasure was often forgotten or lost, and many of the locations remain unknown to this day. The story of Escobar's buried treasure is a reminder of the lengths that people will go to protect their wealth and power. It is also a reminder of the destructive nature of the drug trade, which can lead to violence, corruption, and paranoia. Number 12. Smuggling cocaine in airplane tires. Pablo Escobar was always looking for new and innovative ways to smuggle drugs into the United States. One of his most audacious schemes was to smuggle cocaine inside airplane tires. The scheme involved removing the tires from airplanes, filling them with cocaine, and then resealing them. The cocaine-filled tires would then be shipped to the United States, where they would be broken down and the drugs extracted. The use of airplane tires was a clever way to avoid detection by law enforcement. The tires were an integral part of the airplane and were not subject to the same level of scrutiny as other parts of the aircraft. The smuggling scheme was successful for a time, but eventually it was discovered by law enforcement. In 1987, the Drug Enforcement Administration, DEA, seized a shipment of cocaine-filled tires at Miami International Airport. The tires were traced back to Escobar's Medellín cartel, and the seizure was a significant blow to the organization. The discovery of the cocaine-filled tires was an indication of the ingenuity and resourcefulness of Pablo Escobar and his associates. It was also an indication of the lengths they were willing to go to maintain their hold on the drug trade. The use of airplane tires to smuggle cocaine is just one example of the many creative and audacious schemes that were employed by drug traffickers in the 1980s and 1990s. It is a reminder of the destructive nature of the drug trade and the lengths that people will go to in order to maintain their power and influence. Today, the smuggling of drugs continues to be a major problem, and law enforcement agencies around the world are constantly working to develop new methods of detection and prevention. The story of Escobar's cocaine-filled airplane tires serves as a reminder of the ongoing fight against drug trafficking and the need for continued vigilance and cooperation between law enforcement agencies. Number 13. The assassination of Rodrigo Lara Bonilla. Rodrigo Lara Bonilla was a Colombian politician and lawyer who was known for his opposition to the drug trade. He was appointed as Minister of Justice by President Belisario Betancourt in 1983 and quickly became a target of drug traffickers. Lara was a fierce critic of Pablo Escobar and his Medellín cartel, and he was determined to bring the drug lord to justice. He ordered the extradition of several Colombian drug traffickers to the United States, which led to a wave of violence and retaliation by the cartels. On April 30, 1984, Lara was assassinated in Bogotá by hitmen working for the Medellín cartel. He was shot multiple times as he drove to work, and he died at the scene. The assassination of Lara was a major shock to the Colombian government and society. It was a clear indication of the power and influence of the drug cartels and their willingness to use violence to achieve their goals. The assassination also had a profound impact on the Colombian government's approach to the drug trade. It led to a period of increased violence and instability, as the government and the cartels engaged in a brutal war. The legacy of Rodrigo Lara Bonilla is still felt in Colombia today. He is remembered as a brave and principled politician who stood up to the drug cartels, even at great personal risk. His assassination is a reminder of the dangers of allowing criminal elements to infiltrate and corrupt government institutions. The story of Lara's assassination is also a reminder of the ongoing fight against drug trafficking and the need for strong institutions and the rule of law to ensure that those in power are held accountable. It is a reminder of the importance of standing up to corruption and criminality, even in the face of violence and intimidation. Number 14. The Siege of the Palace of Justice. On November 6, 1985, a group of armed guerrillas belonging to the M19 group stormed the Palace of Justice in Bogotá, Colombia. The group was seeking to draw attention to their cause and demand that the Colombian government release political prisoners. The Palace of Justice was the seat of Colombia's Supreme Court, and the siege quickly turned into a violent standoff. The guerrillas took dozens of hostages, including judges, lawyers, and other court personnel. The siege lasted for 2 days, during which time the Colombian military launched a botched rescue attempt. The military used heavy weapons and explosives to try to dislodge the guerrillas, leading to a large number of casualties and widespread destruction of the building. In the end, the siege was brought to an end by a combination of military force and negotiations. The guerrillas were defeated, but at a heavy cost. More than 100 people died in the siege, including most of the hostages and 11 Supreme Court judges. The siege of the Palace of Justice was a shocking and traumatic event for Colombia. It was seen as an attack on the country's institutions and the rule of law. The violence and destruction caused by the siege was an indication of the extent to which violence and instability had taken hold in the country. The siege was also linked to the drug trade, as the M19 group was believed to have received funding and support from drug traffickers. The involvement of drug traffickers in political violence was a major concern for the Colombian government and society at the time. Today, the siege of the Palace of Justice remains a painful and controversial event in Colombia's history. The government and the families of the victims have called for justice and accountability for the deaths and destruction caused by the siege. The event serves as a reminder of the dangers of political violence and the need for strong institutions and the rule of law to ensure that those in power are held accountable. Number 15. Escobar's extravagant parties. Pablo Escobar was known for his extravagant parties, which were attended by celebrities, politicians, and other members of Colombian high society. The parties were lavish affairs, with gourmet food, expensive drinks, and live music. Escobar's parties were seen as a way of flaunting his wealth and power. They were also a way of creating a sense of loyalty among his guests, many of whom were grateful for the opportunity to rub shoulders with one of Colombia's most powerful men. Despite their opulence, Escobar's parties were also notorious for their dark side. The parties were often attended by drug traffickers and other criminals, and violence and intimidation were never far away. There are stories of guests being threatened or beaten for not showing the proper deference to Escobar. There are also rumors of drug use and other illicit activities taking place at the parties. The parties were an indication of the excess and decadence of the drug trade in Colombia at the time. They were a symbol of the corruption and criminality that had taken hold in Colombian society and the lengths that people would go to in order to maintain their power and influence. Today, the legacy of Escobar's parties is still felt in Colombia. They serve as a reminder of the destructive nature of the drug trade and the need for strong institutions and the rule of law to ensure that those in power are held accountable. The story of Escobar's parties is also a reminder of the dangers of excess and extravagance. They are a cautionary tale of the corrupting influence of wealth and power and the need for individuals to use their resources for the benefit of society rather than for their own personal gain.